How many of you have been pulled over for speeding? What if the cop walked up with a helmet on, equipped with night vision, wearing camo, and carrying a rifle? Would you think he's here to protect and serve, or to go to war? Hi, I'm Jacob Telez, and I'm here to discuss with you how militarization of police can be beneficial to society. I've done extensive research on this topic, and all my sources will be in the description. I will go over how the department gets the best equipment for cheap, how it can be effective in dangerous situations, mental health situations that they might go through, and riot control tactics. Moving on to my first point, how you can get the best equipment for cheap. Now, most agencies, at least the bigger ones, are enrolled in a program called the 1033 program, where the military gives their used equipment or unused equipment that they never touched to law enforcement agencies or puts them up for sale. Now, the Defense Logistics Agency says this about the agencies enrolled in the program. They say law enforcement agencies do not pay for the property, but must pay for shipping the item as well as storage cost. So an example of this that might be relatable is, what if we got our textbooks for free, but only had to pay a $10 shipping fee? Sounds good, right? Now, now talking about the smaller agencies, more rural ones that don't have access to this program or any of the equipment. The U.S. Department of Justice did a study in 2004, specifically John Ashcroft did a study saying small and rural law enforcement agencies as a group are susceptible to falling behind their urban and suburban counterparts in adopting and using computers and other new technologies that can help reduce crime rates, apprehend criminals, and improve safety for officers, suspects, and the public. So they aren't able to do their job the best because they don't have access to this equipment. Moving on to my next point, how it can be effective in dangerous situations. For this, I'm citing former police officer Cody Garrett's video in 2018 titled North Hollywood Bank Robbery and Shootout in 1997, in which two men were robbing a Bank of America vehicle with full body armor, head to toe. One even had an additional plate in the front, assault rifles with 100-round magazines, while the police officers were only equipped at the time with service pistols. Now, because they were wearing the armor, the pistols were ineffective, so they had to go raid local gun stores for their assault rifles to use against the suspects. And luckily, this resulted in only 7 officers injured and 2 civilians injured. One of the suspects ended up shooting themselves, and the other one took 29 shots before they finally succumbed to their wounds, only after SWAT team arrived. Because of this situation, most agencies are now equipped officers with patrol rifles to keep on them. John Ashcroft, in the same 2004 study with the Department of Justice, states they also face the challenge of keeping pace with criminals who use some of the new technologies in planning and committing their crimes, such as the North Hollywood shootout, where these officers were only equipped with pistols versus rifles. Moving on to my next point, mental health situations that the officers might go through. Now, the specific situation I'm going to be talking about is what's known as suicide by cop. Hutson, with Annuals of Emergency Medicine in 1998, wrote an article titled Suicide by Cop, where he defines it as an incident in which a suicidal individual intentionally engages in life-threatening and criminal behavior with a lethal weapon or what appears to be a lethal weapon towards law enforcement or civilians to specifically provoke officers to shoot the suicidal individual in self-defense. of people are going and getting themselves killed by officers by provoking them, by which, not to be harsh, but it's using up resources. So if someone else someone else called about something, a similar situation, they wouldn't have the officers deal with it. They wouldn't have the resources to deal with it. The article also says that suicide by cop accounts for 11% of all officer shootings and 13% justifiable homicides, which is a huge chunk of people. Now, agencies have come up with a way to counter this. They've created programs such as the Crisis Intervention Program. And Michael T. Compton, with a regular article, wrote in 2008 an article titled Comprehensive Review of Extent Research on Crisis Intervention Team Programs, where he states the mission statement is to redirect individuals with mental illnesses when appropriate to treatment services instead of the judicial system. So they're getting them the help they need instead of having them accidentally go to prison for a long time and not getting the help they need there. Moving on to my final point, I'd like to discuss riot control tactics and why this is important is because when you think of militarization, what might first come to mind is riots, and because resources with police officers are so limited, sometimes they have to call the military in to help with these riots, as we've seen in the past few months and a month ago. Now for this, I would like to cite Lieutenant Colonel Rex Applegate wrote a book in 1998 called Kill or Get Killed, Riot Control Techniques, Manhandling, and Close Combat for Police Officers and the Military. And one of the ways that he suggested to deal with riots is make a show of strength to demonstrate to the mob by means of military appearance of his unit, changes in formation, and display of armament, and that the unit is there for serious purposes and is able to use all necessary force to disperse the mob. Now he gives other tactics and formations and equipment that has been used then, but I would like to discuss now the evolvement of this equipment. So back then they ended up maybe shooting into crowds, which now we've evolved from. Now we have less than lethal options. And for this, I would like to cite Charlie Mesloh with the U.S. Justice Department wrote an article in 2008 titled Less Lethal Weapon Effectiveness, Use of Force, and Suspect and Officer Injuries, a 5-year analysis, where he states that for these beanbag type projectiles tend to be the ammo of choice. However, there are many other options available that include chemicals, rubber, buckshot, and rubber fin projectiles. Now we also have batons and riot shields, and we have multiple ways to deal with these people without getting anyone killed. So in conclusion, I have discussed with you today how departments get the best equipment for cheap, how it can be effective in dangerous situations, mental health situations that they might deal with, and riot control tactics. I hope this convinced you that militarization can be beneficial, and I hope none of you get a speeding ticket. Thank you.